right, here we go. Mike, Hunter, and Moshe as we do football at 4 every day here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. And on Monday's edition, we talked about the Eagles' 53-man offensive roster. Now we're going to take a little look at the defensive side of the ball with Geoff Mosher. But before we get to that, Moshe, I want to get into a couple of things that Doug Pederson said yesterday. Get your thoughts on that. Let's start with the whole Andre Dillard, Jason Peters. Did Doug Pederson put those rumors to rest yesterday?
No, I wouldn't say he slammed the door on them. I mean, he certainly gave a vote of confidence for Andre Dillard. I think that's good for Andre Dillard to hear. I'm not 100% convinced, though, that this means that Andre Dillard's really going to be the starting left tackle when the season starts. I go back and forth with this. It's very difficult to figure out. You would think that if Jason Peters were going to be back, he'd be back by now. And if he is coming back, you would think he's going to be starting left tackle because he's Jason Peters. But he's not back, and yet Doug continues to say they're in contact with him. So if I'm just looking at this, I'm wondering maybe Jason Peters isn't back because Jason is still trying to get more money. Maybe the Eagles are holding firm on how much money they're willing to offer. And while they're doing that, they're doing everything they can to talk up the guy who's going to be their left tackle in case Jason Peters isn't back, and that would be Andre Dillard.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, and he kind of said, we have confidence in him. We have confidence in him. We have a lot of confidence in him. I mean, he really tried to stress how much confidence they have by all while saying, though, he needs to get stronger. That's the area he still needs to go. Do you kind of read it as Andrew DeCecco kind of described yesterday, that they want Dillard to win the job? They hope Dillard wins the job, but if he doesn't, we have a phone call that we can make, and Jason Peters is hopefully still there to answer the call.
Yeah, I can definitely see them grappling with that. I mean, I don't know if they're like, if Jason Peters said, I want to come back and I'll come back for, $1 million right now, he might be signed right now. And it would be interesting to hear what kind of excuse they would come up, or rationale they would come with, or how they would even kind of pose it, whether it's a competition or not. Go back to Chip Kelly's first year as head coach. He kept calling it a competition between Michael Vick and Nick Foles, or maybe it was, because Mike was a free agent, had to re-sign, and then they had Foles there. And Chip kept saying it was an open competition, and you would go to watch practice, and a different guy would run first team every other practice. But for people who knew, a lot of us were under the impression through sources that Michael Vick was not coming back to be a backup to Nick Foles, at least not starting the season, and that Michael Vick was going to be the starting quarterback, and that's why he was re-signed. And if you remember, Mike got very frustrated throughout camp, OTAs and stuff, that it was he had to constantly be asked every day about this quote-unquote battle with Nick Foles when he was told it was not really going to be a battle. So I wonder if they're trying to avoid that kind of a situation right now with Peters and Andre Dillard. It's a little bit of a different situation because they drafted Dillard to be the guy. He definitely has to put some muscle on. And, the fact that, as Doug alluded to yesterday, there hasn't been a whole lot of grass time. So there's not been a good amount of time for the coaches to really analyze and evaluate what kind of shape Andre Dillard is in, to come in and see if he's put that strength and he's changed at all in both muscle development and just overall growth.
I always get a funky feeling when Doug speaks, and I would think he learned from the Mike Groh situation. I would also think that the front office came together and spoke with and had a game plan knowing what happened before. I just never know, though, when it comes to these guys, when it's Howie Roseman, Doug Pederson, when they openly talk about something, because I've seen them go right back the other way and do the opposite of what they said.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. They certainly leave themselves a lot of wiggle room when they speak. And I agree that you can't take what's said in a press conference or a Zoom conference at face value all the time. And, the organization's constantly trying to, and look, I think a lot of organizations do this, Hunter, right? They don't want to, they got a kid, they want him to play left tackle. I'm sure they have concerns about what they saw at times last year. He also did some good things. But they don't want to kill him. They don't want to kill his ego. They don't want to sit there and come out right now and say, man, we're really dying to have Jason Peters back because we're in trouble if Andre Dillard has to start left tackle, so they try to play both sides of the fence. And they deal with whatever repercussions come with that when it comes.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Football 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Real quick, before we look at your 53-man roster on the defensive side of the ball, where there's some interesting things, I want to get your thoughts on the backup quarterback spot. We talked to you Monday about you think it might be Josh McCown. Did they seal it for you that Nate Sudfeld is the guy?
Did they seal it? No. I just never think anything's sealed, to be honest with you. I think like I said, they always leave themselves a lot of wiggle room to be able to go back on what they said. So, I've put it out there, Mike, that I think that if you're a quarterback developer or a factory, as you say, then, then Nate Sudfeld should probably be your guy. And this is, year 4, I think, for him. And you have to see that through. But and I do think it makes sense that Sudfeld has more experience in the offense, so he would have a way better shot of being the backup quarterback, the number 2 quarterback, than Jalen Hurts. But we're not necessarily comparing Nate Sudfeld to Jalen Hurts, right? We're comparing Nate Sudfeld to a veteran that might be on the market, whether it's Josh McCown or Joe Flacco or somebody else who might be out there, Matt Moore. I heard Andrew talk about yesterday. So I just, I'm convinced that if it's 3 quarterbacks right now, Hurts, McCown, and Wentz, that McCown is the backup. I'm not McCown. I'm sorry. Sudfeld is the backup. But I wouldn't be convinced that they're not going to bring a veteran in.
After adding all of these new coaches, Jalen Hurts, and other pieces, I find it interesting that Doug Pederson said the changes in the offense won't be noticeable from the naked eye.
Well, that makes me wonder what eyes he thinks are watching him. Only fully closed ones? Because, fans, media, we see. I think you even heard us. We've talked about this throughout the year. Doug's offense is good. I know it was 12th overall in points scored last year, and people were a little upset about him and Mike Rowe and the receivers coach. But they were 3rd in red zone offense and 4th in 3rd down offense. So situationally, it's a very good offense. And I don't think the fundamentals of what they do offensively is going to change, but he brought in a lot of new coaches, and some of these coaches, like Rich Scangarello, for example, have a certain identity. Scangarello comes from the Mike Shanahan tree and the Kyle Shanahan tree. So that tree, we've talked about the 49ers. Motion, pre-snap motion, misdirection, multiple tight end sets, and fooling the defense with eye candy. That's what the Shanahan offense is all about. And I would hope that is something that Doug implements or uses Scangarello to help implement into his offense now, because if I would say one thing that I felt about Doug's offense, even when they won the Super Bowl, is a little bit stale, it's the run formation and the run schemes. He tends to kind of line it up. He may put Aguilar from the slot in motion here to there, but I don't think I think his creativity comes from the motion of the offensive lineman. You see a lot of tackle traps, you see a lot of guard pulls, but I don't think you see as much misdirection and pre-snap motion nearly as much in Doug's running game as you see in other innovative ones around the league. So maybe you'll see that now, and Doug doesn't think people are smart enough to discern the difference, but I think people are, and I would hope that if you brought in somebody like that and you can do that with your offense, that you would use that to your advantage.
Geoff Mosher, Football 4, InsideTheBirds.com, with us here on the Sports Bash. There's a report that just came out. The Seahawks have offered Devonta Freeman. If that's the case, that according to Adam Kaplan, of course, from InsideTheBirds.com, if that's the case, does this mean that the Eagles move quickly to try to get a guy like Carlos Hyde if somebody's off the board?
I don't think the Eagles are going to move quickly on anything, to be honest with you. I think, just like they treated wide receiver, I feel like they have names and they have numbers. And if the names aren't willing to meet the numbers, then the Eagles aren't just going to raise that number because, oh my, there's fewer running backs left. Running back especially is a position that they feel you're not going to throw money at, especially in May when there are, maybe you don't have a guy as good as Devonta Freeman, but you still have some really good running backs out there who can carry the load for a little bit. So I don't think that it's going to force them to act any quicker. But what I do think, guys, is that they'll look at, I mean, we'll look and see what kind of money Devonta Freeman's going to get. I don't know if that's been reported yet, but that'll give you an idea on maybe like the next in line, like Carlos Hyde or whoever would be, in that little Shady McCoy, if he's still interested and if teams are still interested in him, of what they would have to pay.
Going back to the press conference, one thing I loved from Doug Pederson, besides the big flex of having the Super Bowl trophies in the background, was showing the videos of teammates training, which inspires others to continue to work hard during a time like this. How important do you think that is, considering they really can't get the grass time that Doug Pederson wants?
Yeah, I think what's important, Hunter, is maybe the videos are cool and what you're referring to, yes, but really what's important is the deeper issue, and that's how much individual responsibility that players are taking to get themselves in shape, to be ready, whether it's knowing the playbook if they're young or if they're a new free agent, or just having their bodies ready. I think I've seen a video that John Clark from NBC Sports put out of Brandon Graham and Darius Slay working out together in Detroit. That's always good because, now they're teammates, they're working out, they can share concepts. They're both on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, there's a lot of guys on the roster right now between the rookies, the rookie free agents, the draft picks, the newcomers, the guys who came back, and then, the 10 to 20 guys who are kind of on those features, like your Trevor Williams is, and guys who were signed at the end of last year. And not 100% is going to come in ready to go and ready to shit. You're going to tell that there were some guys who were impacted differently than others, or some guys that just didn't work out as well as others did. I won't be able to tell, you won't maybe, because we won't be privy to practice, but the coaches will be. And you just have to hope that the guys who you expect to be on that 53 are really taking it seriously. And even, 10 or 20, 15 more are doing everything they can to be in shape.
Football 4 powered by Inside the Birds. Geoff Mosher's with us today. Let's look at his 53-man roster on the defensive side of the ball. If you missed our conversation about the offense, check that out on 97.3 ESPN.com. We looked at the offense on Monday's show. Today, we're going to take a look at the defensive side of the ball. Let's go to the ends here, where you have 6 of them on the list: Graham, Barnett, and then I guess it gets a little crazy. I mean, Graham and Barnett are the obvious 2, and then after that, I guess it could be a pick from any of these guys, but you like Josh Sweat. You have Vinny Curry coming back, Jannard Avery, a guy they traded for last year, and Sharif Miller making the team. So Curry obviously would be a guy who's not here yet. Sweat would be moving up from the 4th guy to the 3rd guy now. Is this a strong position? Do they need to improve it?
It's a position where they have a lot of upside and potential, but that only goes so far. As you know, Mike, I mean, I still think if Derek Barnett stays healthy and plays a full year, you might, and now entering year 4, you might see something even better than what we've seen the last 2 years just by being healthy alone. I mean, he does have that great elite bend, and you've seen at times he can be very disruptive, but he's got to be on the field and be more consistent. So the way I see it, after Graham and Barnett, you've got probably 4 or 5 spots. I think I have 3 or 4 of them nailed. Obviously, Vinny Curry's a wild card. I've been told that Vinny's getting closer to making a decision. I don't know if we talked about this, but if you had heard, Vinny lost his half-brother recently to COVID-19. His half-brother was the principal at Patterson Eastside High School in North Jersey. The high school that they made that movie Lean on Me on back in the 80s.
Yep.
So it kind of put a damper in obviously in what was going on in his life, but also slowed down the choosing process. So that's probably going to ramp up. I think by the time, we're all having discussions next week in the middle of the week, he may have had a decision there. So if he comes back to the Eagles, I think he's going to be on the team. So you have Graham, Barnett, Curry, and then to me, it's 4 guys battling for 3 spots, and that would be Sweat, Avery, Sharif Miller, and probably Joe Osman. Now, I've said maybe the addition of Jannard Avery could make Joe Osman expendable, only because they're both a little bit similar in that they're undersized, relentless motor type players. Avery is clearly the better athlete. They traded a 4th-round pick for him. But what I like about this spot, guys, is that this is going to be fun. I mean, at training camp, you very rarely see guys battling for real impactful jobs anymore. they're pretty much decided in the offseason. But you know how much these guys on the backup line play after Graham and Barnett. So it'll be interesting to see Sweat, maybe if Curry's in there, Avery and Sharif Miller. Sweat and Miller are 4th-round picks, and the team traded a 4th-round pick for Avery. So if you're the team, you literally see the same value in all 3 of those guys, and you say, you know what? May the best people win. And it may not just be they all may make the team, but it's really about playing time. Who's going to play? So I would think that Sweat and Curry right now have an advantage because Curry knows the defense and has performed well, and Josh Sweat played fairly well at times last year. But look, they want to see Avery. He brings a speed presence, a speed rush that they just don't have from anybody else. And obviously Sharif Miller is going to have to show that he made a lot of progress in the year that he really didn't play.
Of those 4 players that you mentioned, I think Josh Sweat intrigues me the most. And we know what Vinny Curry brings to the table. He's a veteran at this point, so I'm not so much as intrigued by him because I feel I know what he does. But with Josh Sweat, I mean, what do you think we can expect from Josh Sweat if he plays to his highest capability?
Well, the thing with Josh, Hunter, is that you saw last year he played both outside and inside. He played D end, he played D tackle. And the thing that stands out about him is he has an enormous wingspan to the point where if he can really work and refine his pass rushing techniques, but also use those long arms to disengage from linemen and also bat passes down, I think he can become an even more disruptive player. What's always going to be a question with him is the knees and how if he'll be able to hold up over a 16-game season. I thought that there were times last year where he was disruptive and showed some promise. And there were some times where, by the end of the year, he had lost his playing time to Vinny Curry, who was doing just a much better job of also generating pressure from both the inside and the outside. So Sweat is intriguing, but I think I worry that the knee issue is always going to kind of follow him. We talk about that with a lot of guys around the league who just always seem to have injuries or came into the league with injuries about how effective they'll be, and sometimes they fall in the draft because of that. So that's always going to be a back-in-the-mind concern for the coaches, I'm sure.
All right, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Geoff Mosher is our guest today. Let's look at the D tackles, maybe the strongest position on the roster, Geoff. Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Malik Jackson. You have Ridgeway and Rush, but there's a lot of guys that can battle those two for that defensive tackle spot. But the first 3 are very good. And you wonder, we had Malik Jackson on about a month ago and asked him, hey, would you be adverse to bouncing to the outside? He said, nah, I prefer to be in the rotation in the tackle spot, but I'll do whatever they ask. But he didn't seem thrilled about the possibility of bumping out. But those 3 there are going to be tough to top in the league.
Yeah, they are. And if they all stay healthy, you can make an argument that this is the top defensive tackle trio in the NFL. You're right. It's the strongest point of the team. I find it interesting that Malik Jackson said that because he got hurt so early last year in game 1. But if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to go back and check it and count. There were a couple of times where Malik Jackson lined up on the outside, maybe in a 9 technique or a 7 outside the offensive tackle in a couple of pass rush schemes. So they know he can do it, and he's done it before. I think they did it last year because, again, they knew that the interior line was their deepest and strongest, and you had Brandon Graham and you had Derek Barnett, obviously, last year, but they lost Chris Long, so they were looking for a little bit more juice on the outside. When I say lost, they just didn't have Chris Long come back. But I'm pretty sure they played Malik on the outside a little bit. And it'd be interesting. Maybe that's how he got hurt. Maybe that's why he doesn't want to do it anymore. I don't know. But either way, it is a strong trio. I like Hassan Ridgeway to make the team. Now, here's the thing. Do they keep 5 or do they keep 6? If they keep 5, then it's down. Then Anthony Rush is a guy that played well for them last year. But they do have a rookie free agent named Quan Williams from Michigan State who reminds me a little bit of how TJ Edwards made the team last year. Now, Edwards is a linebacker, but he had started a ton of games at Wisconsin. He was kind of like an experienced rookie. Quan Williams started 42 games at Michigan State. So this kid comes in with a lot of seasoning and polish. And I would just, he's one of those guys that I think you watch for, and maybe he can bump Rush out of there, or just force the team to keep 6 and keep Ridgeway, Rush, and Raekwon Williams as your backups.
The defensive tackles are definitely very powerful, but how do you think that will impact the defensive ends, who some would say need an upgrade in talent?
Well, I don't know that it impacts him much. The bottom line is when you're rushing the passer and you're Jim Schwartz, you got 4 guys on the field, you know? So if anything, this depth that they have of defensive linemen, some of them who are flexible in that they can play inside and outside, like Vinny, like Josh, like maybe, like Brandon Graham and maybe also Malik Jackson if he's willing to do it. It gives Schwartz a chance to say, I'm just going to put my 4 best pass rushers on the field and I can probably figure out where they're going to line up best. And I may have 5 or 6 guys that give me 2 really good pass rush lines if I want.
All right, Moshe, let's go to linebacker. We know this is a sore spot. Edwards, Geary, Jatavius Brown, who's been a starter in the league in the past, Davion Taylor, a third-round pick, Duke Riley, a interesting guy, was a third-round pick a couple of years ago, and Alex Singleton. People probably forgot about him. I see that Sean Bradley, the 6th-rounder, did not make your list here, but Riley is interesting. Taylor, the third-rounder. How do you kind of break down this linebacking core?
Well, I have them keeping 6, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if they only kept 5, right? I thought Edwards made really good progress last year. Linebacker. He can run a little bit better. He lost a lot of weight from senior year to last year as well. So, but he's basically your downhill linebacker. Nate Gary is your most experienced linebacker right now, which is kind of scary. Jatavius Brown will be on the team unless he's just completely useless in training camp. And hey, we've seen that before. They signed Corey Nelson a couple of years ago from the Broncos. He was supposed to compete for a starting outside job, and he didn't even make it through the first round of cuts. But I'm assuming Brown's going to make it. So Edwards, Gary, Brown, Davion Taylor, project, third round pick, a lot of athleticism, probably not going to be able to play base defense immediately. Maybe they can get him in some sub packages, but he's going to be on the team. So that's 4. I like Duke Riley. He's still young. He was a third-round pick of the Falcons,
Yep.
So he obviously has some talent there. He's going to give himself the fact that he was on the team last year and knows the defense will help him compete. And that could be your 5th, or if it's not Alex Singleton, now I don't think this is going to happen, but they signed another rookie free agent that they really like. He just ran a really slow time at the combine. His name is Dante Olsen from Wyoming, I believe. He's a tackling machine. That's how a personnel source put it to me. A tackling machine, which the Eagles definitely need. They got a lot of guys who can run around and fly, but we always talk about their missing tackles and, being able to play downhill. I don't know if he's going to be able to edge out Riley or Singleton for a job, but he is someone that people should keep their eyes on.
All right, let's look at the corners because I think this spot, you could either say it's stronger or it's still got question marks because you got Slay, who's stronger, but then you got battles all over the place. Who starts opposite Slay? What happens in the slot? You got Nickel Roby-Coleman, who DeCecco yesterday had some he called him one of the premier slot corners in the league. Maddox has been good in that spot. Cre'Von LeBlanc has been very good in that corner spot. You don't have him even making the team. Sidney Jones on this team, and a guy named Prince Smith.
Yeah, and remember, when you put together a 53 projection, you have to plan for the unplanned, I like to say, because every year, a couple of, who knew that Nate Herbig was going to make the team last year? I think McMullen might have been on that. He knew he sent something, but you have to anticipate certain areas where you think there's an opportunity for an impressive rookie free agent to make the team. And then, of course, that guy actually has to have a good showing. So I have no idea how good Prince Smith is going to be. I just know that they like him. He can fly, which is something this cornerback grouping lacks outside of Slay. And I wouldn't even call Slay like a real fly guy. I mean, Prince Smith can run. So you got Slay, you got Maddox, you got Roby-Coleman. And I'll add to this on Roby-Coleman. I've been told the same thing, that he is one of the premier slot corners in the league. And what makes him that way is that, A, he's physical, and B, he gets his hands on the football a whole lot. Not always in interceptions, but I believe he leads slot corners in PBIs or PBs, or passes defended PDs over the last few years among all slot corners. So this is a guy who it's going to be really hard for somebody to take his job. And that's why when I was looking at this, I'm thinking, are the Eagles going to keep Roby-Coleman and Cre'Von LeBlanc, 2 guys who are slot corners and, don't have as much outside flexibility, when they have an opportunity to keep a guy like Prince Smith, who has, great speed and might be able to contribute on special teams and then play a little outside corner if they can work him in. So that's why I went and cut strap to put Prince Smith on, but I certainly don't think that that's guaranteed at all.
Yeah, and that also means Rasul Douglas is out, a former third-round pick as well. Let's go to safety, which is a very interesting spot. But it seems like it's got more depth and talent than, yes, Jenkins is out, but McLeod is a solid guy. Parks, people like his versatility. Mills is a wild card. And then there's Kayvon Wallace. So while you don't have that star player like you did with Jenkins, you might have more depth here.
Yeah, you have a lot of flexibility, right? Jalen Mills, who's still on the team's website as a cornerback. I don't know what you would call him. I don't. He's not going to play the outside unless there's a lot of injuries. But he's not necessarily going to be a safety either. He's kind of going to be like a jack linebacker, if you will, someone who can cover some tight ends in sub packages because he has good length. You know, an interior kind of corner / hybrid corner safety. So I guess that's why they don't really have his title changed there, because it just depends on what you want to call it. It's up to interpretation. Yeah, McLeod will be your deep safety. Will Parks is a movable piece. He can do a lot of things. I tell you, because of the upgraded cornerback with Slay, makes me wonder if Jim will be a little bit more exotic with his blitzes or creative or even blitz a little more. And Parks is a guy who can get to the quarterback. He can play in the box. He can do a lot of different things. He's actually one of the more intriguing free agent pickups. Adam and I were trying to figure out just like why analysts seem to love him, and yet the Eagles were able to get him for only like $1 million or so. I know he said he took less money to play for the Eagles, but it's not like he turned down a 10-year, $50 million offer either.
Yeah.
He was,
Nick Ferguson out there in Denver was on with us and loved him. I mean, he essentially said the only reason he didn't get playing time is because of his draft status, and that the two guys in front of him were higher draft picks. And that doesn't mean he was better than them. It's just that they had an opportunity first because they were drafted higher than him.
Well, then it may turn out to be a fantastic steal for the Eagles. So I'm intrigued to see how he plays. And obviously, Kayvon Wallace with that corner / safety versatility, that Clemson pedigree. Brian Dawkins is a big fan of him. Brian Dawkins' son roomed with him at Clemson. So he's a rookie. And again, hopefully he'll be able to pick up things quickly and he can tap into that big college game experience that he has, because this guy, I think, has a chance to be one of their best draft picks.
It's Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Geoff Mosher with us today. Adam Kaplan will be on Thursday's show, and we will dive deeper into all these Eagles offseason stories and some NFL stuff, including the news on Devonta Freeman, and we'll keep our eye on the Eagles in the running back spot. But, of course, for more, check out InsideTheBirds.com, and, of course, every day, Football at 4 right here, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Thanks, man.
All right, we're not going to do kicker, long snapper, and punter? No?
We were going to save that for a whole nother segment.
Sounds great. I'll be there.
All right, man. Take care. Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com.